3, 2, 1.
Welcome in, Life in the Red podcast. I'm Chris. There's Parker. There's Brent below me on my screen. He's filling in for Steve Sipple today.
Sipple looks really good this week.
It's a lot quieter with Sipple. He's a lot better looking. He's younger. He's virile. He looks great. Now, B-Dub's we're going to talk a little volleyball here off the top. Nebraska losing to Wisconsin, number 3 Wisconsin by sweep last night. Then we'll also touch on some football. We'll get into some hoops. Hoops played their first exhibition game last night, as well as a busy day yesterday. Kind of a sneaky busy day last night in the Nebraska sports universe. So let's just get right into it with volleyball. Wisconsin comes in, sweeps, ends Nebraska's 10-match winning streak. B-Dub, I guess what was maybe a couple of the biggest things you took away from what you saw last night?
Oh, just Wisconsin is still, I would say, definitely the top team in the Big Ten. They've won the last 2 Big Ten titles. They have super seniors, and their super seniors are really good. Nebraska obviously has seniors as well, but Wisconsin now has freshmen Wisconsin's freshmen were better than Nebraska's freshmen, I would say. That was kind of a key thing going in. Wisconsin was clearly the better team, but it was 2 close sets there. Nebraska lost the first one 26-24, and then the last one 25-23. Nebraska just spotted Wisconsin like a 5-1 run to start the match, and not even Wisconsin just making great plays. Nebraska made some errors, and then the really disappointing one was in the third set. Nebraska had a pretty nice lead, and then Nick Lahane said they just kind of let off the gas pedal, which is really disappointing to be playing a big match at home and 8,000 fans and have that happen. I still think that was the 2 top teams in the Big Ten. Be interesting now. Nebraska probably wasn't as good as their 10-match winning streak would indicate. They were playing, a lot of those teams were the bottom. A lot of those wins were against the bottom teams in the standings. But there's Nebraska's still a good team, obviously, and they'll get another big test this weekend. They go up to Minnesota, and they'll play some more ranked teams. I think Wisconsin still has to play Purdue twice. They still have to play Minnesota, so there's certainly still chances for to both teams to lose a match or 2. But I still think those are the top 2 teams in the Big Ten right now.
You wrote some about serving and just sort of the inability to make that a weapon or a positive. I guess, like, how, with the stretch of teams that Nebraska's got coming up, how important is that element of what they do, and how do they need to utilize it if they're going to make a run against all of the good teams that they're facing down the way?
Yeah, I mean, it's right again on Saturday. They play in Minnesota. They have Stephanie Samity, who is, I don't know, probably the best player in the Big Ten. She's unreal, how she jumps, how she snaps the ball. So once again, they're going to have to serve well to try to limit how many times she gets good swings. Nebraska plays Ohio State again. They have great hitters, so that a lot of teams have good hitters where you're going to have to serve well. Nebraska has great floor defense, so it gives them a chance. But you certainly don't want to give players like Dana Redke and 6'9" Anna Schmreck a clean chance to attack you.
Is that, like, they obviously have Redke and 6'9" and all that. I mean, and you can talk about, you can't give them a clean chance, but how realistic is that? When you've got Nebraska's obviously has good athletes up front, physical athletes, but at some point, does it just become Wisconsin's just bigger and they're able to hit over the top of that block enough to make it easier for them?
Yeah. I mean, going into it that they're gonna get their clean shots and then you move on, but they got too many of them, and then they didn't do well enough against the other players either. Wisconsin had a 6-foot outside hitter, and she still was able to hit off Nebraska's block. So, and then when Nebraska got some chances from Wisconsin, they didn't make them pay for them. They didn't pass well enough, so they're sending over easy balls, and then when Wisconsin gets an easy ball, they're going to convert for a kill, a high percentage of the time.
Maybe sort of like zooming out a little bit, but coming into this year, B-Dub, with all the experience that Nebraska has and all the players back and all of that, I guess how does it surprise you at all? Or I guess what have you made of the way that Maddie Kubik has sort of emerged as a go-to type of player? She's obviously always been talented, but what does that look like to you, and what does she mean to this team overall?
Oh, I mean, she means a lot. I mean, she's had an amazing Big Ten season. Start of the Big Ten season, Cook said, we got to pick some players and let them roll. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know that even she was a lock at that point. I mean, nobody had clearly emerged as a defining player, but I think she got confidence from just being chosen. And then it's amazing, you can see what confidence does for an athlete over the last, each week she's got more confidence. She's got to be one of the best players in the country at hitting balls off the blockers. It's amazing. It's shake your head stuff, how she consistently does it, and how the opponents know that's what she wants to do, but she still finds a way to get it done. So she's done this before. Her freshman year, she didn't have a very good start to the season, which is more understandable because she was a freshman, and then just tore it up in the Big Ten and ended up being Big Ten Player of the Year. But yeah, it's been a lifesaver for Nebraska because they haven't got as much production from that second outside hitter position, where both Allie Batenhorst and Lexi Sun have got chances to play and take advantage of that. They haven't been as good. So what Maddie's done has been a lifesaver for the Huskers.
All right. That was good. That was good volleyball talk. That was better than anything we're going to say about the football. That was better than anything we'll say about the football team.
That's expertise right there.
That's real live expertise from Brent. All right, B-Dub.
Thanks a lot, boss.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Brent. There he goes.
Bam. There he goes.
And he's gone.
Into that sweet night.
Yeah. All right. Well, after that, I don't even know how we continue after that.
That's been a great podcast. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Well, I suppose we can move on to football. They actually have a game this weekend that we should probably talk about. Hosting Purdue, 2:30. Is this the first 2:30 kick of the year? It is, isn't it?
No, didn't they have one previously? No, Buffalo. Buffalo was a 2:30 kick.
Buffalo. There you go. Second 2:30 kick of the year. First 2:30 kick in the conference. Memorial Stadium coming off the bye. Purdue coming off games against Iowa and Wisconsin. Purdue coming off being ranked for about 5 minutes before they played the Badgers last week. The latest must-win game in the Scott Frost tenure. It's the start of this closing stretch that we've kind of pointed towards all year. Purdue, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa. That's not the right order, is it? Might be flip-flop Wisconsin, Ohio
Purdue,
State.
Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa. No, you nailed it.
I got it right. How about that? There you go.
Perfect.
How about that? Deeply, deeply entrenched knowledge from your boy over here. So I think, all of us, or most of us, probably at the beginning of the year, looked at this Purdue game and thought, well, they have to win this one because that's going to be the kind of the last winnable game,
right?
In that stretch, quote unquote. And now all of a sudden, it looks a lot harder than it did, a couple months ago. Purdue's got a really good defense, top 10 nationally in a few different categories: rush defense, scoring defense. Gave up 30 to Wisconsin last week, and I think they're still 7th or 8th in the country in scoring defense. Now they put up some good numbers against some subpar competition too to help get there, but they're still done it. And so this isn't going to be easy sledding for Nebraska, I guess. As you kind of look at this, Parker, how does it shape up for Nebraska? Where does Nebraska need to make its hay if they're going to win this thing?
Yeah, it's funny because the Purdue is better, I think, than what a lot of people, present company included, expected this year. Certainly they're better defensively. You knew they had a really good player in George Karlaftis. And then if you if you want to look at the last 4 games in general, Ohio State's really good. Nebraska's going to be a big underdog next week. We have plenty of time to talk about how big of an underdog they're going to be. But the Final Four doesn't actually look quite as it looks like Nebraska's can be in 3 of those games for sure. We'll see about Ohio State. Weird stuff happens in college football Ohio State's also scored 52 or more in 4 straight games. So that's if you take that game out of the equation, maybe like Iowa and Wisconsin actually, just with how limited those teams have both been offensively, both look like slugfest kind of games. Now, Nebraska hasn't beat those teams consistently, but you look at this and you say it's sort of the blessing and the curse or the frustration of this year for Nebraska fans in general. I mean, you look at Purdue, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and you say, hey, this Nebraska team can beat any of those 3 teams, can beat all 3 of them. And then the question is like, what is the likelihood that that's actually going to happen? I mean, they could have beat Minnesota. They could have beat Michigan. They could have beat Michigan State. It didn't happen.
Could have beat anybody they played so far, basically.
Yeah. So if you want to look at it from the opportunistic sense, and this is sort of the way that Trev Alberts, the athletic director, talked about it on the radio the other night. This is for as many chances as Nebraska has blown this year in close games, they've still got at least 3, maybe 4, let's call it 3 really good ones to prove that they can win these sort of, knockdown, drag out, slugfest league games. And you'd think that it's going to happen at some point. It hasn't yet, obviously, but even with the clock sort of winding down on the season a little bit, there's still a bunch of opportunities left for that to happen.
Yeah. And this one is maybe better than most. Nebraska's had a pretty good record. I mean, beat Purdue last year up there and really played one of their better games of the season for probably the first 3 quarters of that game, or first 2.5 quarters of that game, whatever you want to call it. Certainly started well, scored on their first offensive play after, I think was it a turnover or block? Was it the block punt that was on the Purdue's first possession last year?
Yeah,
or something like that. They were set up. They were set up down deep. Scored. They're up 14-0 5 minutes into the game, 17-0, whatever it was. So it's a team that Nebraska probably feels pretty good about matching up against. Something they don't feel good about matching up with some of these other teams. It's a team, like we said, coming off 2 physical games against Iowa and against Wisconsin. And talking to Mike Carmen, who covers Purdue for the Lafayette Journal and Curl, he said Purdue wore down last week against Wisconsin, that run game in the second half. So you wonder kind of where their gas tank's at. They're a little bit banged up at a couple of different areas. Nebraska, they're almost kind of like Nebraska was a couple of weeks ago, going to the Minnesota game. Now Nebraska coming off the bye, by all accounts, refreshed, feeling good. Scott Frost has been downright jovial this week when meeting with, as jovial as Scott Frost gets. When he was
talking about, he came up and Caleb Henry, I think it was wearing a Tennessee Titans hat, and he came up to the mic and he's like, "Are you a Titans fan?" He's like, "Yeah," and he goes, "Why?" And he said, like, "Well, my dad was a Cowboys fan, so I was an Oilers." And then Frost started talking about how he got to go. He went to he went and watched the Oilers play, maybe at the, I don't know if he's at the old Astrodome or something.
Sure.
And it's watching Earl Campbell. He's like, yeah, you used to be able to smoke in there. So there'd be it was sort of funny. It was just one of those little moments. It's like, I guess this is where we're at this week.
But no, we say this every week. This game is super. I think Nebraska, and we'll get to our score predictions later. I think Nebraska wins this game, but I think, I'm not saying they're going to do it comfortably, but I mean, because it's never comfortable, obviously, and we all know that, but it feels like a game Nebraska can win and maybe not have to sweat in the last 5 minutes or something like that, or 7 minutes, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Purdue can't run it at all. And they're basically looking for reasons to give up running the ball when games start. That they have David Bell, who of course is special, who torched Iowa. Wisconsin did a much better job on him, got a little more physical with him. They've got this 3 quarterback thing going right now. We'll see 3 guys behind center Saturday probably. So they kind of do some unique things. Jeff Brom can obviously draw some stuff up, but you look at their offensive numbers, and it's not like they're lighting the world on fire. Right. Even with David Bell, he's a game changer, but the points per game isn't great. The yardage isn't great. They can throw it. They throw for over 300 a game. Like we said, they can't run it. They're not explosive like Nebraska is. I think that's maybe the difference in this game. And so if you're Nebraska, this I think probably leads into the hot topic pretty well.
Yeah.
If you're Nebraska, and we say it every week or almost every week, you want a good start, right? And can you get Purdue in a hole early, make them one-dimensional? But if you don't have that quick start, if you don't go down and score in the first 5 minutes, 7 minutes, or whatever, how long? And I'll start with you, Parker. How long before you start to get concerned that it becomes, oh boy, here we go again, and we're in another one of these close ones?
I would imagine that if you're talking about the Memorial Stadium crowd, it will be like pretty much right away. Like if Nebraska starts with the ball and goes 3 and out, there's going to be some restlessness. The natives will be restless. But I actually think the answer to this question is not for a long time. Like, well, maybe into the second half, because we've seen it. We saw it last 2 weeks ago against Minnesota in the last game against Minnesota. Nebraska really couldn't have played a lot worse early in that game. They gave up the 2 long touchdown drives. They went 3 and out in 45 or 52 seconds in their first possession. And even still, what's up, Gus? Even still, they had every opportunity to take control of that game in the second half. And one of the things I thought was interesting, Frost has made this reference a couple of times this year. He said, if we weren't ready to play against Minnesota, we wouldn't have come back and gotten back in the game the way we did. And that really, for the most part, Nebraska's problem hasn't been staying in the fight. It's just been that they haven't always done their work early enough in the fight. So I guess you could take that as going against what I just said. But to me, I think Purdue's not the type of team that can go run the ball and sit on the clock the way Minnesota did. So I think if you get down early, you just keep swinging and sort of trust that it's going to come around at some point. But that certainly, Baz, is not the way that Nebraska wants to play on Saturday.
No, and I tend to agree with you. I think the problem is if you get down early, if you're Nebraska, does it start to compound and you try to do too much on offense and you start giving a poor offense more opportunities and you start giving David Bell more opportunities and Jeff Brome more opportunities to maybe draw something up, or maybe you have a defense that thinks it needs to go make a play and all of a sudden there's David Bell in single coverage up the sideline, with a chance to extend the lead. So yeah, I tend to agree. I don't know that the concern will be right away, mid-second quarter or whatever. I think it probably goes into the second half because I don't feel like Purdue is just has the explosiveness to run away and hide. And they certainly don't have the running game to bleed the clock. So I'm with you there, but you can see why the concern is palpable. It's for everything you said, because it's happened how many times this year, because Purdue's got a guy that Nebraska doesn't have on offense, a first rounder, and David Bell, and they've got a guy on defense that Nebraska doesn't have, a first rounder. So you can see why the concern would be real and why there'd be a good reason for it. But yeah, this is a game that I think it's not going to be real crazy one way or the other. I don't think either team's going to come out and run the other one off the field. So yeah, I'm with you. I think this goes into the second half before you start seeing real concern if Nebraska doesn't start.
It's interesting because this is a game where like we've talked about this as being a potential sort of like pass rusher's delight type of game for Nebraska. Like Nebraska hasn't, they're near the bottom of the league in sacks, but that Purdue's going to try to push a ball down the field. The thing about this type of game is you don't want to get in a situation where you have to take risks defensively, because that's sort of like you say, that's when a guy like David Bell gets you. I mean, part of the reason why this is a similar, not fully, but similar defensive game plan to like Oklahoma, where they went into that game and they said, we cannot give up big plays. We cannot get beat over the top. And they were really effective in playing top down. Part of that's because they didn't get behind. They didn't fall way behind where you have to, hey, we got to get it. We've got, of course you want to, but the more that they can play help over the top of David Bell, the more that they can play top down and not feel like they really have to press the issue and sort of let the pass rush opportunities come to them, the better off you're going to be. And that is most likely to happen if you can play from ahead, where you're the other team's pressing instead of you. So that's sort of that seems like sort of the cat and mouse game in terms of trying to limit what David Bell and then Payne Durham's a really good tight end, limit sort of what those guys can do in the passing game.
Yeah, and again, Nebraska did a pretty good job of that last year for the most part. David Bell had an 89 yarder, but it was because Nebraska had two guys basically open collide in midair and take each other out of the play.
I think didn't Rondale Moore have like 13 catches for 74 yards?
Yeah, it was a bizarre number. Yeah, they did a really pretty good job defensively last year, and you would expect a similar type of game plan this year. Okay, well, that moves us on to Scott Frost. Like we said, the jovial Scott Frost met with the media today. There was a kicker competition, 4 kickers involved. I was one of them. Disclosure.
Yeah, so was I actually.
There was 2 of us. That tells you where the kicking situation's at for Nebraska right now. We know Ramir Johnson's going to be back. He's cleared protocol. Ryan Heldkind told us that Tuesday. Scott Frost just kind of confirmed it, but also said they don't really know what the rotation will look like behind Ramir. I thought it was just interesting reading through the rapid that you put up, Parker. Just they had a 4 kicker competition 9 weeks, 10 weeks into the season, and you see why, of course. And just there's still things about this team that are unsettled, even coming out of a bye, even getting ready to face these final 4 games.
Yeah, especially a kicker. I mean, that's I was curious. There's not many spots on the roster where they sort of made their move on the offensive line earlier in the season. And then obviously Teddy Prohaska got hurt as he was playing well, true freshman and all that. So that was unfortunate for them. But kicker really sort of seemed like the spot to me, and maybe the number 2 running back, which we can talk about a little bit, as the spots where it's like maybe something substantial will change. Now, I don't know. We'll see. It's very possible, Connor Culp, for as much as he struggled this year, has held on to that job largely because the other options are not just like young guys, but extremely unproven. Mm-hmm. So I think there's every opportunity. In fact, I'd be mildly surprised even still with a competition if Connor Culp doesn't ultimately hang on to that job. But it's really hard. I mean, against Minnesota, they set their strategy in the second half once they got back into the game. In terms of like they set their strategy with trust in Connor Culp, because they attempted a field goal down 5 in the third quarter, and the thinking was, well, it's 27 yards and right down the middle, we're moving the ball, so let's take 3, and then we'll get back down here and trailing by 2, then you can take the lead with another field goal. Yeah. Instead, he pushes a 27-yarder right. Now you're not only are you not within a field goal, but you don't trust him the next time you're down there. And so it's really kind of the bye week was the chance to really take a close look at the place kicking position and say, given where he's at physically and mentally, is that the guy, or do they have to try to do something else? They at least explored that question. We'll see what they decide the answer is.
I think they go with a new kicker Saturday, at least at the beginning. Here's what's going to happen. They're going to trot out a new kicker. Something catastrophic will happen. It will get blocked, returned for a touchdown or whatever. It'll be an Oklahoma situation. And then Connor Culp comes in the second half and makes a couple.
That would be, I can't even think of what sort of like prize I could give you if you nailed that one. Just like that would be impressive. It's interesting because like you got to put yourself in the real game situation, right? Like, I mean, okay, so if it's 0-0, you're late in the first quarter, teams have traded stops, you stall out, and you've got a 39-yarder from the hash to try to put the first points on the board. Like, that'd be a heck of a spot to roll Kellen Meyer out there,
Yeah, there you go, kid.
You balance that though against whether you trust Connor Culp to do it at this point. And like, I don't want to make this sound like piling on Culp. I mean, it's obviously been really rough on him. You feel bad for him. And he's come out and he talked to us after the Minnesota game. You could just tell what a toll it was taking on him. And so this is not to like, disparage the kid or anything like that.
Yeah.
It just is, that's a big time decision of like, and it will tell a lot about where they think not only Culp, but the other guys are at based on how that plays out on Saturday.
Yeah. Another position to keep an eye on, not necessarily the starter. We know who the starter is going to be, Ramir Johnson, but who's the next back in after Ramir Johnson? You know, is it Jaquez Yant? Is Marquise Stepp healthy? Is it Gabe Irvin? Does he get his shot? You know, again, still almost head shaking that we're at this point in the season. You know, I can think back to the week of the Illinois game and even before, where all we heard was we're going to find one guy and he's going to be our guy and he's going to be our workhorse. And here we are 9 weeks in, and you maybe found a guy, but you have no idea what you got behind. And it's just, you just kind of shake your head at it. So I don't know, Parker, you probably know better than I do. Is Marquise Stepp's situation one where he's going to be able to get on the field Saturday, or do we know?
We'll see. I mean, I asked Ryan Held because a few weeks ago, Frost had said he wasn't sure that Stepp was 100% healthy after the toe injury. But, you know, they brought him on the road. He's traveled with them all the way, and he wouldn't bring a guy if he wasn't physically capable of playing. And Ryan Held sort of said that on Tuesday. He said it's been really just more about consistency. And so, the thing about each guy has had their issue. I guess, like, it's never this simple, right? But if you were to boil it down to like a very generalized thing, Stepp struggled in pass protection early in the year. Savion Morrison, really surprisingly, has struggled to catch the football. And Jaquez Yant is just, he tripped on the fourth down. He went the wrong way and against Michigan, ran into Adrian Martinez on a 2nd and short where Frost, thought they were set up really well. It was the only possession of the second half in the first 5 where they didn't score. So they've each just sort of had their inconsistencies. And so I think it's a real toss-up. Like, I can't say I'd be fully surprised if the bye week they look back at it and they're like, okay, let's try Stepp again. But that's certainly not a guarantee. Yant's been the second guy in the last couple of games. So you could make an argument for any of the 3 of them. And they just really, it's not just about Purdue. Like, if they find a guy who can consistently be the number 2 back behind Ramir for the last 4 weeks, they're going to be in much better shape. But so far, that's been wishful thinking more than anything else.
Yeah, it's almost like the kicking situation, right? Just kind of a different version of it. Just like, who do you trust at this point to get the job done? So, all right, should we make a couple predictions so we can talk some hoops and get on out of here?
Let's do it.
Nebraska wins. I'll go first. This plays into my kicking scenario that I hatched a few minutes ago. I think Nebraska wins 27-17. I think Purdue blocks a field goal and returns it for a touchdown.
Let's go.
For one of their scores. I think David Bell catches one, not necessarily a long one, but I think he scores for the 2 touchdowns. They had a field goal. And then I think Connor Culp comes on in the second half and makes a couple to kind of keep it comfortable. I think Nebraska does score early. Maybe gets up 7-0, 10-0, and then from there it's 2 evenly matched teams playing. So give me Nebraska 27-17.
I've been this more than any other year. I've been wrong about Nebraska a lot this year. It's been hard to get they've been. Part of it's because of the close game thing and all of that, but it's been a little bit hard to get a read on when they're going to come out and play well. They have for the most part, but obviously not enough. They're 3-5. The interesting thing about Purdue, Baz, is that since they opened, they beat up UConn on September 11th, and since then they've scored 13, 13, 13, 24, and 13. So I feel like I'm bucking the trend a little bit to not pick Purdue to score 13 points.
True.
I'm going to pick Nebraska in a close game for some stupid reason. That this is the day. It's got to happen at some point. And I don't fully subscribe to the theory that like all they need to do is win one close game and then magically they'll just be off and running. So it's not that. But I do think Nebraska will find a way to win. I don't think it will be comfortable. I'm going to pick it slightly higher scoring than you and say Nebraska 27, Purdue 26.
Nebraska football. I don't think it'll be comfortable. That's the slogan of the year so far. Yeah. All right, let's talk some hoops.
Hoops.
Get out of here. Husker men played their first exhibition last night, beat Peru State. I already forgot the score, 97.
It's a long flight from Peru.
That is a long flight from Peru. You wonder what kind of mileage they got on the old credit card for that one. Fred Hoiberg said it last night. They got exposed in a couple areas. And yes, it's the first exhibition game. It's new guys and all this, but they've got some issues rebounding the ball. And that's leading to issues with perimeter defense. And if you're struggling to rebound the ball against Peru State, how's it going to go against Purdue and Illinois and Wisconsin and Michigan? They've got to get better there, and they're going to get another quick chance here Sunday against Colorado, who was a really good team last year and is bringing a strong freshman class. So I thought it was interesting for a lot of ways. We kind of got an idea of what the rotation might look like, or at least what it looks like right now. That those top 9 guys and a couple of the guys that are kind of on the outside looking in Eduardo Andre and Kobe Webster, and guys that played a lot of minutes for you last year. Kobe Webster started the last 5 games last year. Right now, he looks like 10th, 11th, 12th guy right now. So
which you would think would be good, which you would think would portend like good things, right? If you had a guy who was contributing last year who now is further down the rotation.
They have a lot of talent, but it's really young. I think Keon Edwards is a really good player, and he's in that top 9 right now, but he's young. You know, Kisi Tominaga is playing his first major college basketball. Same with Bryce McGowan's, the 5-star freshman who had a couple moments last night, but you could tell is still a freshman, still looked a little tentative in a couple spots. I thought just kind of working the nerves out, working the rust out. Wilhelm Breidenbach, kind of that same thing, you know, a guy that's clearly in the mix. So yeah, I think, look, their depth and their talent's much better, but if they can't rebound and if they can't be more physical, you know, that's going to be an issue. And one play is stuck in my head. Nebraska had all 5 defensive guys in the paint last night, and a Purdue guy came in and got that offensive rebound and kicked out for a wide open 3, and they made it. And that's basically a guy going 1-on-5 and getting an offensive rebound against you. So they've got some things they need to clean up. And it, like Fred Hoiberg said, it helps to get that stuff on film so you can show it to your guys and see this is what we're talking about. You got to be more physical, and they'll get better at it. But rebounding has been something that's been a bugaboo for this team in Fred's first couple of years. And right now, I think if you're looking for concerns, that's probably at the top of the list, because that can kind of bleed into everything else. When Nebraska rebounded it, they got out in transition. They looked pretty good offensively. This team's going to be able to score. There's no doubt about it. It's as good a shooting team as Fred's had since he's been here. I think it's as good a shooting team as Nebraska's had in a lot of years. So it was good to see him in that atmosphere last night. It'll be, I think, really fun to see him Sunday against a really good Colorado team. Should be a little bit better crowd with the 11 a.m. tip. There's not a volleyball match going on. It's Halloween. You know, you'll probably see some spookies and some scaries show up in the crowd. So that'll be a better gauge, I think, of where Nebraska's at right now and where they need to get to before November 9th gets here and they open the season against Western Illinois.
Okay, I got a question for you, Beth. So last night, was the starting lineup? It went McGowan's ×2, Wilcher, Latt, and Walker. Was that the starting 5?
That's correct. Okay. Yeah.
So can they, when they roll out and open the season, is Alonzo Verge really going to be a 6th guy, or is he, or like, does he need to be running the show like as a starter as the year goes on?
Yeah, he'll be starting. And he'll probably start Sunday. And Fred Hoiberg said as much. That was just the decision that Fred said he made last night to start Wilcher over Verge. But look, yeah, like it's clear, like he's the guy, right? And Trey McGowan has experience, Latt has experience, Derek Walker has experience, but they look different when Alonzo Verge is on the floor. And that's a guy that's done it in the Pac-12 for a few years. He's got no fear. He's got great vision, great quickness. He's a really good decision maker. He can get into the paint, but he's under control in the paint for the most part. He knows how to kick it out and find a guy. He found Derek Walker. I think his first 4 possessions were pick and rolls with Derek Walker, and they got 3 layups and a foul out of it. So, you know, it's that kind of pace, that kind of vision. They just look different when he's out there. So yeah, he's a guy that's going to play a lot of minutes for him. And if you're looking for positives to take out of last night, boy, Alonzo Verge looked really, really good.
There you go. Well, you are raising your son to be just like you, Baz. He piped up right when we started talking about hoops.
There you go. Yeah, he's on the baby monitor right now, waking up from the nap.
Up from the nap.
Yeah, so it's about that time for me to go get him. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We'll have more for you next week. Stay tuned to HuskerExtra.com for all your coverage leading into Saturday's game, and we'll talk to you next week.